All right, we are back carrying forward with the pre-powerlifting local metabolic phase. We've got the second upper body lift here today. It's going to follow the same structure as the last two workouts, where I have a couple of main lifts. Well, in the case of the first two workouts, we just had one main lift, on day one being the squat, day two being the bench press, and then today, no competition lifts. We just have a Meadows row and an incline barbell press. Same idea. I'm going to allow myself to rest as much as I need to in between sets on these, just really trying to focus on good quality, moving some weight before moving into the other hypertrophy section of the day, which is going to be a similar structure again, using short rest periods, higher reps. But on this one, what's a little bit unique is that we're going to utilize some Agonist Supersets with a lot of these. So typically when we're supersetting things, we're going to do it for the purpose of time efficiency more than anything else. So if I'm doing a Meadows row, let's say we're doing that on a day, an imaginary day. And then I was also doing an incline barbell press. I could superset those two things and they wouldn't really compete with one another. As my back is resting, I'm doing the press, and as my chest is resting, I'm doing the row. So that makes a lot of sense. The Agonist Supersets, on the other hand, are going to be using the same body parts for each of the exercises, however many exercises you have within that superset, which is usually going to be 2. So you'll see that throughout the section B here. I'll explain why I'm using certain exercises and how I've structured them. So let's get right into it. At 2 for the day, and we're already shirtless. That is not a good sign. So kicking things off with the Meadows rows. Man, I never got a chance to meet John Meadows, unfortunately, but I heard he was an amazing guy, great thinker, massive man, and nothing but respect for him. So stealing this exercise from him, making a couple of modifications on it, maybe compared to how he would teach it. Using it really as an upper back exercise. So really trying to do the best I can to drive the elbow out, which is slightly difficult with the setup. I think it's still a good utilization of the exercise. It's a little bit funky, and that arm is kind of getting pulled up a little bit more than I want. At the top, the more this hand goes towards the body, the more it's going to turn into a little bit of a bicep curl, and I'm going to have to start utilizing a little bit of bicep to do that motion, but mostly thinking about this elbow going out and trying to pull with the upper back as best as I can. Obviously, there's machines, if you have access to them, that are probably going to be a better option, but I don't know. I've always liked this one, and we got to give respect to John Meadows whenever we can. I think I started to superset here after the second set, so throwing in a set of incline press, which proved to be a real problem for me at the end of this powerlifting prep, and I'll get into that in a later video, but this is definitely too much range of motion for me. There's a certain point where I can definitely feel that my chest is starting to kind of lose tension. Probably right about here is where I should have stopped. So maybe utilizing a pad or some type of block to reduce the range of motion would have been a really good idea, which I kind of knew at the time. But my ego, of course, gets in the way, and you got to touch your chest, right? Otherwise, it doesn't count in front of all the people that aren't in your garage. And you make bad decisions sometimes. So for most people, that all the way down to the chest on an incline press is okay, I guess. For some, I don't know. You have to decide if it's something that's right for you. And here I am confused as to the bars over there. Where are we going? You got to use straps on these. No one has hands big enough for this exercise without the straps, and if they do, they're probably not watching this video. So use the straps. Definitely don't make the grip the limiting factor, because it definitely will be if you're not using them. Versa grips are cool, but I'm more of a purist. I like the regular straps. And this is a good one to utilize some partial reps on too. You can see I'm not going all the way up, and that is on purpose. At the end there, just trying to squeeze out as much as I can at the end of the set. So the classic way of doing this exercise is to have that opposite hand on the knee, which is totally cool. I feel a little bit more stable and stronger with the hand on something else. So I like just pulling something over to put the opposite hand on, and that, along with a really wide base with the feet, just makes me feel really stable, and just feels like a easier way to produce force. And this is a good angle to kind of see what's going on with the scaps as well here. We're at the end of the set, really just primarily getting retraction at the end of the set, really not moving the arm all that much. And I think that's a good way to just get as much as you can out of the end of the set there. So I'm using the incline press as a supportive lift for the bench press, just to get that groove of kind of pushing up and back on the bench that you need with a competition style bench. And again, getting more range of motion, which could be a good thing for hypertrophy and just building some strength through a bigger range of motion, which you could argue whether or not that actually has carryover to the competition lift. But like I mentioned, this is probably a little bit too much range for me and what I have available. And everyone's going to be individual on that. That's something that you have to figure out for yourself. But as a general rule of thumb, if you get down to the bottom of the rep, and in this case, you're just starting to feel less tension through the pecs and more into the shoulders and just other areas that you don't really want to be training, then that's probably a pretty good sign that it's more range of motion than you need. Could you build that range of motion up over time? Probably could, but I don't know if you should be doing that under maximal or near maximal loads. That's a different argument for a different day. And on these ones, I was just working up each set a little bit heavier. Just a newer exercise for me. Instead of starting high and going to lighter weights, I like to actually go the lighter weights and build up like a traditional pyramid on exercises like this. Moving into section B here, this is the shorter rest portion of the workout, relatively higher reps, and we're utilizing that short rest to induce fatigue. Kicking things off with pull-ups, man, I'm still a pull-up fan. I've used pull-ups through my entire bodybuilding career, and I still find them to be a pretty useful exercise for me. They absolutely destroy my lats, and I think you can make a good argument for them being a decent lat exercise. I feel like they kind of get shit on nowadays, and maybe that's a good reason for certain people, but if you can do them with good technique, I still think it's a pretty good exercise. So during this section of the workout, we're using the short rest period, so you should see that those reps drop off from set to set, which we'll definitely see here, and it happens real fast, especially with the upper body stuff. I do find that upper body fatigues out almost more quickly than lower body does, and so we'll see some short range of motion reps here towards the end, and yeah, these get pretty tough pretty quick. Just a different angle here. You kind of see that I'm trying to keep the feet out in front, just pushing the feet forward a little bit and almost doing like just a really crappy L sit kind of position. Just makes these a lot easier to control through the thorax and the abdomen. That's a big problem, I think, with pull-ups for most people, is they have a really hard time anchoring their thorax. So when they're pulling, they're also extending their backs, and they're not only changing the line of pull, but they don't have a solid structure to pull from. So putting the feet in that position can be really helpful. If you have a lat pull down machine, that's probably a better option for most people, but I don't have one of those. I am taking donations, so if anyone wants to send me money to buy a new lat pull down, I'll also probably need a new house, because I'm going to need somewhere to put the lat pull down. But yeah, anyone who wants to help out, please send me some money. All right, we got a nice gruntal plane view here with these presses. Apologize for the view on the camera angle here. I don't know why I chose this one, but this is going to be a Agonist Superset. So basically going as close to failure as I can here, with full reps on the press, and then we're going to immediately go into a cable fly. And by immediately, I mean in about 30 seconds, because it's going to take me a while to set this thing up. And there we go. So ideal if I was able, it would be more ideal to be able to just go right into it, but limitations of having one bench, I'm certainly not complaining. We're getting the job done. And so yeah, just by the time you get to the flies, pecs are already pretty fried out, so the weight is embarrassingly light here. But again, another perk to working out in your garage. Nobody has to know how weak you are on your cable flies. Reducing the load after that first set on both of these, so starts off pretty nice, and then towards the end of the set, it just tanks real fast. And again, utilizing some partial reps here, even some kind of pauses at the bottom. A little bit of a different angle. I feel like this is more appropriate. So we reduced the load after the first set, and now we're just banging out as many reps as possible on each one of these sets, utilizing some partials, some pauses, some iso holds, whatever it can squeeze out here, and then going into that cable fly, and same idea. And these go pretty damn quick after 4 sets. Not really getting a whole lot, and yeah, the weight on there is pretty sad. But again, serving the purpose. This is exactly what we're looking for during this phase. Want to try to be able to get as much stress in those tissues as possible with as little loading as possible. Well, first of all, sorry for the camera angle here. I'm not the best at filming. Jeez, this is not very good. So this is a good time to talk about why I'm structuring these the way that I am in terms of the Agonist Supersets. So the idea is if we can superset not just 2 random exercises together that train the same body parts, but ones that serve a little bit of a different purpose, and that's going to make the most sense. So in that chest press and cable fly example, the cable fly, the harder part of the motion where it's heavier and where it's just more difficult is at the top of the range of motion, and it's the opposite on the press. So as I get down lower in the press, I have a bigger moment arm at the shoulder, so it's effectively heavier on the pecs at the bottom where it's being stretched. In the superset here, I've got a Y raise where it's heavier at the top, the way that I have the cable set up. That's also the position where the delts are a little bit more shortened, the medial delt and a little bit of the posterior delt. And then on this facing away, Y raise or lateral raise, whatever you want to call it, it's a little bit more difficult at the bottom of the range of motion in terms of the loading. So the moment arm is greatest externally at the bottom of the range of motion. This superset is gnarly. Anything delts wise, for some reason, to me, anytime I do these kind of supersets, it just hurts so bad, and it's a good hurt, but there's definitely a lot of moaning associated with it. Okay, I did a little bit better job with the camera angle on this one, but still not great. So you can see I've got the straps over the top of the hand rather than holding on to the straps, just one less thing to have to deal with in terms of joints and just extra tension and effort. So being able to push up on the way up and then back into those straps at the top of the range of motion just makes it much more effective. It just feels way better, and it's just easier to get the job done like that. I usually get a little confused when I have to do this little shimmy. Yep, it's dangerous. Okay, I almost tripped myself. Good work. High levels of coordination here involved. And again, when you switch to the new exercise, it's like similar to the rest period in any of these local metabolic type of cycles. That first couple of reps just feels like you're going to do absolutely nothing. And then you kind of kick it in, and then it just totally dies again towards the end of the set. It's pretty magical. Delts are sufficiently fried at this point, so luckily I've only got 3 sets of these on this day, and just trying to eke out as much as possible to finish this one off. I really like this Y raise. I've got this in the earlier workout of the week as well, just doing it on my back. But I really do like these variations. Not doing a ton of overhead pressing right now, and I do have a bit of a bias, and I think that is a good thing to throw in a program, just some overhead stuff, especially in a more hypertrophy powerlifting type of program where there's a lot of things that are working pretty hard to depress the scaps, and you're just not doing a ton of stuff overhead. So I think including these types of movements can be a really good thing from a shoulder health perspective, and also just developmentally in terms of the delts. So always a good thing to throw in there. And yeah, these are just getting really gnarly. Just throwing in some partials, kind of, and just that's the end. For some reason, this is the only position that feels somewhat okay after that kind of superset. Barely hold my arms up. I'm going into a tricep agonist superset. So this overhead position we had earlier in the week. I like this variation given the equipment availability that I have, and I like it in this superset. So we're going to get a little bit more length in that long head going into some shoulder flexion. So just going slightly overhead is a way to kind of stretch that long head of the tricep out a little bit more. And then we're going to go into a regular tricep extension with the cable after that. So nothing too crazy here, just same concept. Maybe not quite as relevant for the triceps, but it is a slight distinction, and this shit's fun, man. Getting a chance to do some of this type of training every once in a while is cool. It's not something that I typically do, so it's a nice change of pace, and kind of brings you back to those old school days before you could read. Well, in my case, I still can't read, but yeah, doing stuff like you used to back in high school. It's a good time. And so this one, you'll notice on both these exercises, kind of have the elbows kicked out a little bit more, just going through the path that my arms naturally want to take me, and that tends to be what feels best. So reducing the load again after that first set, and then we'll be going back after a 90-second rest to that first exercise. All right, last set of these, the fourth set, and probably the hardest thing about this exercise is just getting the fucking handles. This is a good angle to see where I'm kind of pulling from. I'm trying to get as close to that cable as possible, so it's not pulling me back a ton. It's more just pulling in with that rope. You don't want a ton of external rotation force going on with these. It's not going to make things feel super great. And yeah, again, just using some partials at the end and just getting as much as I can out of that last few inches of the range of motion, and then going right into the regular tricep press. And I'm using the straps again here. Again, I like just being able to push into them with the hands rather than have to grip them. Maybe this is why my grip is so bad. I don't know, but feels good. Just feels right. And I think, yeah, I had to make a drop on these because the range of motion was just so crappy from the start. So just dropped it down. And honestly, with these types of workouts, I don't know if it really matters. I like to structure things as much as I can to be able to make it trackable and reproducible. But with these types of programs, you just need to work. So does it really matter if I get the loading right? I don't know. It's just go to a point of fatigue that is really uncomfortable, and you're probably doing the job. So we are going into some elbow supported bicep curls, which are definitely too heavy. The range of motion is pretty crappy on these. I do find on these that it's one of those exercises again where it just feels very sketchy to go to a really full range on, but this is pretty poor. You can see at the bottom of the range of motion, still got quite a bit of bend in the elbow, so straighten this out a little bit more would be good. If you are going to use this type of exercise, just be aware that if you're leaning back like this and you straighten out the arm, there's going to be a lot of load at the bottom on that bicep. So this is something that you want to work into, and just make sure that you're using loads that are appropriate. I would also be sure to kind of keep pushing the elbow back into the bench to really lock that upper arm into position. And then we're going into a bicep curl after this, the cable, which this one, as far as an agonist superset, I don't know, probably doesn't make a ton of sense. But again, sometimes it's fun just to throw these in. I've kind of got an angle coming in just to line up that resistance with where my arm wants to go naturally. So when we compare these two exercises, the main differentiation here is that I'm getting to a little bit more loading in a lengthened position here on this exercise. For one, I've got the elbows behind the body slightly, so that's going to put the biceps on a little bit more of a stretch, just being a weak shoulder flexor. If I go back into extension at the shoulder, I'm going to be stretching those biceps a little bit more. But the main thing is that the load is going to be a little bit heavier at the bottom. You can see that at this point, the bicep is relatively more stretched, not fully stretched, but this is where resistance is going straight down. So I've got that 90-degree angle. Again, wherever that 90-degree angle is, that's where the external moment arm is going to be greatest, and that's where the load is going to be the heaviest on the muscle. So on this bench supported curl, that's going to be more towards the bottom of the rep where we start to see that 90-degree angle, and the bicep is on a little bit more of a stretch. So we've got positionally, we're stretching a little bit more, and also just through where the load is heaviest, we're loading that stretch a little bit more. Now, I said earlier that this one isn't as great of a superset because I'm not really differentiating them that much. In that position, I could be leaned back more and really have that arm out in front of me, so I'm really getting most of the loading at that stretch position. But again, it just doesn't feel super comfortable to me. And then the difference on this exercise, you can see that 90-degree angle is happening more where the bicep is shortened, and so it's a little bit heavier effectively at the top of the range. So again, just conceptually how I'm putting these things together. In action, they don't always work out perfectly, but it makes enough sense to do it. And again, it just brings you back to Flex Magazine in the early 2000s. And who doesn't love this type of training? So this front angle, you can see that the elbows are going out to the side a little bit. So I'm just allowing the weights to follow that path. So I'm pulling up and in slightly, just following where the elbows naturally want to go. If I tried to keep the hands in close to the body on these, I would be creating almost like this twisting type of thing at the elbow, and that's not good. That's not really what your elbow should be doing. Yeah, the old leg shake here on those, that really helps. I don't really like doing the partials on the bench supported curl, but I'll do plenty of partials here on the cables to finish things out. And these will start getting pretty short in terms of range of motion. Get to the end of the set and just doing some iso holds, whatever we can do here. This just sucks because you could always kind of do more partial reps, and at some point you just gotta submit to the fact that you're not that tough, and you just gotta stop. All right, just finishing things out with a little bit of ska and some hammer curls with the rope. So on these, allowing the shoulder to move a little bit on these is fine. So the primary muscles that we're using here, the brachialis and the brachioradialis, aren't really connected to the shoulder, so not a big deal if we're changing length at the shoulder at the same time, changing position of the shoulder as we're curling. And so just doing what the arms kind of naturally want to do here. And I like throwing these in every now and then. I oddly have a pretty well developed brachialis, and there's room for some jokes there for sure, but we're not going to go there. So I don't really do a ton of these, and I think just doing a lot of neutral grip back work tends to get the job done there as well. But this is something that I'll throw in every once in a while, every few training cycles, just to get a little bit more specific work in with those muscles. So that's it. That is the second upper body lift of the pre-powerlifting local metabolic cycle. If you have any questions for me, if you want any clarification on anything, if you want to know where my t-shirt went, throw it in the comments, and I look forward to talking with you guys next time.